Thank you very much for joining us, Tom.
Thank you.
So let's kick off with your long career, particularly as a former ACS president and as a honorary life member. How did you get into the IT sector?
It was a process of elimination. I wanted to be an environmental engineer, but I wasn't very good at engineering. I wanted to do something environmental. I wasn't very good at cutting up insects. I was extremely good at maths and computing, and so that's what I did.
And where were you studying at?
I'd been a failed student at many universities. So I actually didn't manage to get an undergraduate degree. Instead, I joined the Australian Public Service as a clerk.
Right.
And then I got a promotion as a programmer's assistant. So essentially my job was to carry the computer printout from the printer to the programmers and as a trainee. And I happened to join a department which had just bought a new mainframe computer system which came with millions of dollars of training. So the public service trained me as a programmer, analyst, a database designer, project manager.
Right. Which department was this?
This is the Australian Bureau of Statistics.
Okay, right.
So I would work in the mornings carrying the printout around, and then the afternoons I go upstairs to a classroom and a class of about half a dozen staff with the best trainers in the world giving us very close tuition.
Right.
And then I go back downstairs and put it into practice.
Okay, yeah. And where did you go from there?
Well, I had a career in the Australian Public Service in Canberra, so I got promotions from department to department, programming, designing, ended up after, at the end of my career in the Defence Department, by accident, writing IT policy.
Right. So, and how did you get involved with ACS?
Early on, it was pretty much as soon as I arrived in Canberra to my Bureau Stats job, I saw there was going to be a meeting in response to a then minister's idea that we wouldn't need any programmers anymore because artificial intelligence would write all the programs automatically.
Yeah.
And the ACS called a meeting, and I went along and I said, somebody should do something about this. And by the end of the meeting, a membership form had been thrust into my hand.
Right.
And within days, I was on the Canberra branch executive as a extra member. And that was it.
Right. And what year was that?
I can't remember, to tell you the truth. But it was a very long time ago.
Yeah. I'm fascinated that we were talking back then, I would assume the 1980s, or that we were talking about AI taking programmers' jobs then.
Yes, and at that stage, it wasn't a very realistic idea. And the Computer Society was saying, look, this isn't realistic. You're going to need trained professionals to do things. And even today, with the advances in AI, it's still the case that we will need trained professionals to oversee this.
Yep. So you join ACS in Canberra, and where did you go from there?
Well, I was on the branch executive even before I was formally a member of the Computer Society, and I would do odd jobs for that, and it kind of continued much as my first exposure to ACS, where I'd be at an ACS thing and I'd say, someone should do something about this. And before I knew it, I'd been volunteered to be the head of the working party or the subcommittee or whatever it was to do it. And that's pretty much how it's gone. That in some cases the ACS has nudged me into things, such as the World Wide Web.
Right.
So I went to an ACS seminar and my peers explained the web to us,
Right.
and I thought, this is rubbish.
Right.
This is never going to amount to anything. And it took days, it might have been weeks, for me to realise that this was important and significant. And I went to a meeting with some colleagues in the public service, and after a few weeks I went to my boss at the Defence Department and said, "Sir," and he was a one-star military officer,
Yep.
"the Defence Department needs a homepage."
Right. Yeah.
And he said, "Tom, I haven't understood one word you've said for the last 5 minutes, but if you think we need one, it's approved.
Right.
Where do I sign?" So I said, "Here, please, sir," and he signed.
Yep.
And then we did a homepage for the Defence Department. And pretty much that's the way it worked with the ACS as well, that if there was something I thought was interesting, the ACS would encourage me to go and do it for the benefit of the profession.
Right.
And I'd have the resources of the ACS to help me out, and a band of enthusiastic volunteers
Right.
to go and do it.
Yeah.
And then that would be useful in my day job as well.
Right. So, so you're on the Canberra branch. How did you get moving to the national side of things?
The way it worked was I was the branch nominee to go to the national council meetings,
Yeah.
Congress meetings. I was on various committees, working parties at the national level on different things. I was director of Community Affairs Board, so I took over from Roger Clark.
Right.
He, with much glee, handed me these great big cardboard boxes full of files and things.
Yeah.
So gave them to me to do. So all those things were relatively easy because I was always the understudy to somebody else. There was another representative. I was, the second one on the thing before I was the first one.
Yeah.
And in the same way, these are things that were relevant to my day job, and they were things that were interesting and I thought needed doing.
Sure.
And it was great to be able to, do them through the society.
Yeah. So you would have seen a big change in your time with ACS on going from a purely volunteer organisation to a much more staff-driven organisation.
Yes. That in the early days, it was the volunteers doing a lot of the work, and that was always a frustration. So we have more staff to help us out. The beauty of it is where you still have the volunteers and the experts driving the process, and the staff there are to do the mechanics of it, collect the data, make it look nice, distribute it.
Yeah.
So, and it's always tricky getting that balance right.
Yeah.
And some of it's fun. So I got sent to the UK, for example,
Yeah.
to go to a meeting, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the meeting?
This was I think it was the Association for Computing Machinery, were trying to convince all of the computer societies to publish through them. And so the British Computer Society hosted the meeting, held just down the hill from Windsor Castle.
Okay.
And we had the German Society, a number of the European ones.
Yeah.
And at some stages in the discussion, the Europeans would turn to me to try and translate what the Americans were saying, because Australians are used to having to deal with Americans, and
Right.
and and like the Germans simply couldn't understand the use of American English at some stages.
Yeah.
But it was one of those international sort of meetings.
Yeah.
Interesting. We didn't take the deal.
Right. So you said that when you became president, let's go back a step there. You had Roger Clark handing over to you on the committee level. So who did you take over from as president?
Now, was that Prinz Ralston?
Right.
I think. And I was an accidental president. I nominated for vice president, the usual fashion of going for the deputy. But to be credible, you have to also apply for president. But I got elected president, which was interesting. I actually had to go to my boss at the Defence Department and say, look, I'm thinking of, doing this. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And fortunately, being a military person, he was used to staff doing things for personal development, which were useful to the organisation, and enthusiastically said, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
And probably elected because the Victorians had a candidate, the New South Wales branch had a candidate.
Right.
And so they neutralised each other.
Yeah.
And I was left as the third party.
Very much that ACT Canberra, neutral ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'd been on national positions for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I think I also served a term professional development as well.
Yeah. So, how did you find it in that period as president, and your previous role in the vice president for the development?
Frustrating.
Right. Okay.
The decision-making process of anybody is always frustrating, and the higher you get, the more layers of decision-making involved.
Sure.
What surprised me as president was how little power I had.
Right. Yeah.
So I had this fantasy that I would just issue orders and everybody would do what I was told. But in a membership-based body, that's not what it's like.
Yeah.
So you have to listen to the members, judge what the mood is, and essentially do what they want.
Yeah.
You can't tell them to do anything. So it was the committee meetings. Even when I was ordering committee meeting, I always found it frustrating, the process.
Yeah.
And I used to subvert it
Right.
by using email. So before the meetings, I would circulate my ideas. During the meetings, we would have an online discussion,
Yeah.
which would run in parallel with what was officially being said. And as president, I guess I encouraged that as well. I tried not to inject my views into the meetings so much, but encourage others
Yeah.
to do it. And even to the point, if I wanted to make a point on something, I would vacate the chair, let a vice president chair the meeting, and I would participate
Yeah.
as more of another member of the committee. So, which some people found frustrating because they wanted a dictator.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. A benevolent dictator. Yeah. So who succeeded you?
I can't remember, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So what were the achievements that you were particularly proud of during your period there?
I chaired the first online meeting of the national body. So we actually went into, I think it was a Telstra video conferencing suite.
Right.
And I sat in front of a screen similar to the one here in the ACS Canberra branch. Now it's a routine thing we have.
Yep.
We had to go through the rigmarole of working out whether it was legal to have a remote electronic meeting.
Yeah.
And we did it, and it worked fine. And it seems rather silly that the Australian Computer Society would not be using computers in its processes, but up to that point we hadn't done that. So that sort of set the precedent for that approach. Apart from that, I managed to survive us holding the International Federation for Information Processing International Conference.
That was the one in Brisbane, was it?
No, this one was in Canberra.
Right, okay.
Just happened to be in Canberra.
Yeah.
Chaired, organised by Ashley Goldsworthy, a esteemed past president. But a bit like running the United Nations or the Olympics.
Yeah.
Complex, expensive, and I subverted that process as well. I thought it was all a bit stuffy and formal, so I invited the presidents of the computer societies to a bar and told them they have to wear a silly hat.
Right.
And so we had a whole lot of them sitting in the bar with hats on.
Yep.
As part of a normal event I used to run, where we would invite esteemed people to sit in the bar and just chat to ordinary members of the profession.
Right. Yeah.
Without any formality of speeches or anything. And they all had a great time.
Yeah.
And we got through all the formal
Yeah.
IFA business as well.
So who would you say were your biggest influences in the times that you've been at ACS?
There was Peter Tolte, who guided me through the whole system. Roger Clark, as well. But then all of the CEOs of the organisation. As president, I had to realise I was not running the administration of the place. I was the political head.
Yeah.
I was, there to give speeches and inspire, not run things. But in a way, the membership, the fun part of the job is going out and meeting ordinary members around the country.
Yeah.
And talking to them. And our current president is doing a wonderful job with that, by the way, to being seen and, talking to people. Yeah. And I guess I was inspired just by the idea that I was part of a profession. And it was a bit good for the ego that I could go up to Parliament House and sit in front of a Senate committee and they would listen to me. Sure. Because I was the president or held some other position in an esteemed body.
Yeah. So on that, you just spoke about the profession. So what is your advice to somebody who would be entering the industry today? Where would you point them?
Well, this is my day job. So I actually help with a capstone at the Australian National University, which is a few kilometres from here, where it's the last course the students do before they graduate. Okay. And we are teaching them project management, but we're also teaching them how to present yourself, how to think about your future career, what sort of job do you want, how do you get that job. Yeah. I guess I'd say to them, it's that business of professionalism where you don't just think, how do I maximise my income from this next task? What skills am I learning? Yeah. Where's the industry going? How do I position myself to be part of that? So a few weeks ago, the students had to answer a question about what they see as their future career and what next step are they going to take after they graduate. Yeah. 80% of them said they're going to do AI. Right. So I said to them, okay, that's good, but you might need to specialise in a particular aspect of AI in terms of application or creating it. Yep. Because everybody wants to do AI. Sure. So that's not going to get you anywhere. And then what step would you take to get there? And some of them said, I'm going to do a PhD. And I said, well, maybe you think a small step, a little short course or
tiny steps,
something that you could do, and then think who can help you. And so there's your professional body. If you want to learn about something.
Yeah.
And I discovered a shortcut. If you want to be an expert on something, you just get yourself appointed the head of the ACS committee on whatever it is.
Right, yes.
And then the world thinks you're an expert in it.
Right.
And you can also go on the training, learn about it, teach others.
Yeah. Right. So where do you see the future for ACS in this world?
I think it's basically doing its job as the professional body. So it's about ensuring the integrity of the membership in terms of ethics and setting the educational knowledge standards, working internationally with other similar bodies, and telling the community what needs to be done, and also telling the government.
Yeah.
And one of the things the volunteers and the members have difficulty with is being bold enough to say, well, we know more about computing than anybody else does, and it's our job to provide advice to the community and to the government on what to do. And they can be a little bit hesitant. Surely somebody else knows better.
Right.
But they don't.
Yeah.
So all of those things, and exactly what's the new area to get in will change from time to time.
Sure.
The society has difficulty with things like how much training for members does it offer, and what areas is it doing that in?
Yeah.
And how can it do that where it's not just competing with universities and TAFEs and commercial bodies?
Yeah.
So those things will change from time to time.
Yeah. So we're doing this interview the morning after the 2024 federal budget, and we saw in that budget somewhat tokenistic amounts of money to things like AI for the APS capabilities, those sort of things. How do you see the Australian technology sector, government, from your history as a public servant, how do you see them adapting to the current world of technology?
Probably the technology will be having less of an impact than the new government.
Right.
So we had a Conservative government which was trying to outsource everything. We now have a government which is trying to insource some things. So that will probably have more of an impact than the technology.
Right.
But in a way, it's a good time to do that, because at the same time they can think about how to adopt the new technology for those new staff. So exactly how do we do that? I have a bit of an insight to that because I teach students some of whom are already public servants.
Yeah.
So they're cadets. And some of whom are interns working for the major consulting companies to government. So I hear stories I can't repeat.
Sure.
About contracts on things.
Yeah.
And some of who work in government agencies in sensitive positions. So I would see an urgent need for the technologists in government to be trained in things like AI.
Right.
And that's a role the Computer Society can help with in providing them with quick, short, essentially not the technical details, but what do they need to know about. And then the universities and the vocational trainers for providing the in-depth stuff. The major problem at the moment is still the federal government isn't paying high enough salaries to attract the talent.
Right.
So the problem will be that they will attract low-level staff, give them some training, and they will leave me as soon as they got it.
Right.
So I spent, how long? 19 years, I think, as a public servant. Millions of dollars training spent on me.
Yeah.
And I would be promoted to a position, trained in a whole lot of stuff, promoted. Those promotions happened often enough that they could keep me.
Yes.
So they provided me new interesting challenges, a bit more money, which was nice.
Yes.
But at the moment, the federal government isn't doing that.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to bump up the salaries. And it's an extreme case in the Defence Department, for example. There's no way they can get the talent they need in civilian and military roles.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to do what they do at the moment for pilots, where they offer them very large bonuses to stay another few years.
Sure.
But they need to put in a program. And if they said to the staff, we're going to give you this long-term training, they wouldn't need to pay them quite so much regularly, because that would keep them happy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting view there. So, Tom, to conclude, what are your general thoughts on your career, on ACS's role in it, and where you see the future for Australia in general?
Well, I think I've been fortunate that I kind of fell into a good job with the government, and then I fell into the hands of the Computer Society.
Right.
And they've kept me educated and amused ever since.
Yeah.
It's been a good ride. I hope that will continue. And it's kind of nice. After I was president, I decided to step back and just help in a few minor roles.
Right.
And it's good to watch other people
Yes.
doing the stuff.
Yeah.
And I've resisted the temptation to try and tell them what they're doing wrong. But it's great. I can turn up to events, and I love the fact that when a colleague says, "Oh, have you heard about this new exciting area of computing?" And I say, "Oh yeah, I went to a thing on that at the Computer Society 6 months ago."
Right.
That I've already been briefed on that new exciting development because my professional body is, keeping me up to date with things.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, on that positive note, I'd like to thank you very much, Tom, for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.